Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy the content, please hit that subscribe button right now. The fallout from Kevin Stefanski's catastrophic coaching decisions continues to reverberate throughout the NFL, and while everyone is still processing the blunder that should have already cost him his job, another story is gaining traction that provides fascinating context about how opposing coaches view Shedeur Sanders compared to other rookie quarterbacks. Tennessee Titans interim head coach Mike McCoy just went viral for comments he made, comparing Sanders to the #1 overall pick Cam Ward. And depending on how you interpret his words, he either gave Sanders backhanded compliments or revealed some uncomfortable truths about the different situations these two quarterbacks find themselves in. What's undeniable is that McCoy's assessment has sparked a massive conversation about wins versus statistics, team construction versus individual brilliance, and whether the narratives surrounding these rookie quarterbacks are being shaped fairly based on the actual circumstances they're dealing with. The question posed to McCoy was specifically about the national conversation comparing Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, asking him to delve into how the shape of the game is such an important ingredient for a young quarterback's success. The setup of the question itself reveals the underlying tension in how these two players are being evaluated. Ward threw less in the Titans game and needed to throw less because Tennessee had tremendous success running the football. Sanders put up the flashy statistical numbers that grab headlines and dominate social media highlights, but he ended up on the losing end when the final score was tallied. McCoy's response to this dynamic was diplomatic but revealing, and it provides important context that often gets lost when people just look at box scores and compare raw numbers without understanding the vastly different situations these quarterbacks are operating within. McCoy emphasized that it's all about winning, which is a completely fair and legitimate point that nobody can argue with. He acknowledged that Sanders had to throw the ball significantly more at the end of the game because the Browns were playing from behind and trying to mount a comeback. McCoy gave Sanders credit for doing a nice job in that role, but then he made a comment that raised some eyebrows and sparked debate about whether he was taking a subtle shot. He mentioned that the Browns helped sustain their own drives with a number of penalties, which could be interpreted as suggesting that Sanders' performance wasn't entirely his own doing, and that Cleveland's offensive success was aided by defensive mistakes rather than purely quarterback excellence. That's the kind of comment that seems innocuous on the surface but carries implications that defenders of Sanders immediately picked up on and took issue with. The core of McCoy's message focused on the importance of the running game for any young quarterback, but especially for rookies who are still learning the nuances of NFL defenses and game management. He made the point that a running game is a quarterback's best friend, particularly for someone in their first year, because it takes pressure off them to carry the entire offensive burden on their shoulders. The Titans ran the ball with tremendous efficiency in their game against Miami, and McCoy gave credit to all 11 players on the field for the way they executed in the running game and stuck with it throughout the contest. He emphasized that you can't just run the ball a couple of times here and there and expect it to be effective. Running backs, offensive linemen, tight ends, everyone involved in the ground game needs to get into a rhythm, just like quarterbacks need rhythm when they're throwing the ball. McCoy positioned the Titans' performance as a great example of how having a good running game helps a young quarterback succeed and develop properly. He talked about how they protected Cam Ward and set him up for success, framing it all as part of the natural growth process for rookie quarterbacks. McCoy noted that the game against Miami was another great test for Ward in his rookie season, facing a really good defense that plays a tremendous amount of man coverage and features the best pass rusher in the NFL coming off the edge. These are the kinds of experiences that help young quarterbacks learn and develop, and McCoy's message was that both Ward and Sanders are going to continue getting better with more repetitions and experience. But critically, he emphasized the importance of young quarterbacks learning about having a good running game, utilizing checkdowns, and doing the next best thing rather than always trying to make the spectacular play. The analysis that followed McCoy's comments acknowledged that he was absolutely right about Cam Ward benefiting from an exceptional running game. Tony Pollard was cooking throughout the night, playing like the version of himself people remember from his best days with the Dallas Cowboys. Pollard was having a dominant performance that took significant pressure off Ward and allowed him to manage the game, rather than being forced to carry the offense entirely on his arm. Ward didn't have to have a massive impact throwing the football because the Titans' ground game was so effective. In stark contrast, Shedeur Sanders not only led the Browns in passing, but also led them in rushing because Cleveland was completely unable to open up holes for their running backs. Quinshon Judkins and Dylan Sampson had essentially no running game whatsoever, forcing Sanders to create offense almost entirely through the passing game, while also scrambling and making plays with his legs when the pocket collapsed. This is the critical context that often gets lost when people compare rookie quarterback statistics and performances without accounting for the vastly different circumstances they're operating within. Sanders is being asked to do significantly more with significantly less support, while Ward is in a situation where the team construction and game planning allows him to develop more gradually without having the entire offensive burden placed on his shoulders. At least McCoy gave Sanders credit for what he accomplished in the game, acknowledging that he performed well despite the adverse circumstances. And McCoy made one particularly important point that deserves much more attention than it's received. He noted that as these young quarterbacks continue getting more repetitions and experience, they're going to keep improving and developing. The problem is that the amount of repetitions and quality practice time these two quarterbacks have received is dramatically different. Cam Ward has been getting first-team repetitions since rookie minicamp, before training camp even started. He's accumulated literally months and months of practice time with the starting offensive unit, probably 5 full months of first-team reps leading up to this point in the season. Shedeur Sanders has gotten maybe a couple of weeks of legitimate first-team repetitions. The disparity in opportunity and developmental support is staggering and undeniable. During training camp, while the Browns were publicly claiming there was a quarterback competition, Sanders was reportedly throwing passes next to trash cans and working with equipment managers, rather than getting meaningful reps with the actual starting offense. The competition was never real. The organization never genuinely wanted to give him a fair opportunity to compete for the starting job from the beginning. This wasn't about evaluating who the best quarterback was. This was about predetermined conclusions and organizational bias dictating decisions regardless of what the actual performance and talent evaluation should have indicated. The commentary then shifted to reactions from other analysts, specifically LaShawn "Shady" McCoy and Emmanuel Acho on their show. The anticipation was that Shady McCoy would keep it absolutely real about the Kevin Stefanski situation without any sugarcoating or diplomatic hedging, and that's exactly what happened. The discussion centered on Stefanski's decision to take Sanders out for that critical 2-point conversion, and McCoy's reaction was one of complete disbelief and frustration. When it was mentioned that the design of the play was supposedly perfect, McCoy immediately questioned the logic of having a rookie running back, trying to read a cornerback in the most critical moment of the game. Why would you trust that situation over putting the ball in your quarterback's hands when he has the hot hand, when he's full of confidence, when he's been making plays all game long? The entire premise made no sense to McCoy, and he wasn't shy about saying so. When it was suggested that the running back didn't execute properly because he didn't go with the corner when the defensive alignment dictated he should, McCoy's response was essentially asking why the Browns were even putting themselves in that position in the first place. Why are you asking a rookie running back to make split-second reads against NFL cornerbacks in the most pressure-packed moment of the season? When someone tried to defend the decision by saying that players have to make plays, McCoy shut that down immediately by pointing out that he's not putting the ball in his rookie running back's hands in that situation. When pressed about whether he would rather put it in his rookie quarterback's hands instead, McCoy's response was unequivocal. Yes, absolutely, especially when that rookie quarterback is the hottest player on the entire field and has been carrying the offense all game long. McCoy emphasized that Sanders was playing at an extremely high level. He was the hottest thing smoking on that field, and he had just led back-to-back touchdown drives in under 6 minutes to give the Browns a legitimate chance to tie the game. Given all of that context, taking him off the field for the 2-point conversion made absolutely no sense. McCoy called it exactly what it was: sabotage. When asked to confirm whether Sanders was indeed the hottest player on the field, McCoy didn't hesitate in his affirmation. Then he expressed his frustration with Stefanski's post-game explanations, saying he's tired of the half-hearted, non-committal answers where the coach seems like he doesn't even want to address what everyone is asking about. McCoy pointed out that metaphorically, people are throwing tomatoes at Stefanski right now, and rightfully so, because his decision-making has been indefensible. The discussion continued with McCoy making the point that a 2-point conversion is essentially the same as any other goal line situation. The ball is 1 or 2 yards from the end zone, and you have goal line plays designed for exactly those circumstances. When your quarterback is the hottest player on the field on both sides of the ball, why wouldn't you give him the ball and let him make the play? That's just basic football logic. When someone tried to bring up the Titans game and how Tennessee got plays when they needed them, there was initial confusion about whether they gave the ball to Cam Ward in critical moments. The clarification was that actually, when the Titans needed plays, they primarily went to their running back Tony Pollard, who had been dominant throughout the game. The running game was working so effectively that Tennessee didn't need to force Ward to make spectacular throws or carry the offense single-handedly. Shady McCoy made the crucial point about going to the hot hand in games. When a player is performing at an elite level and everything they touch seems to turn to gold, you ride that wave and keep giving them opportunities. You don't bench them or take the ball out of their hands because you want to be clever or run some trick play that makes you look like a genius if it works. But then came the most damning indictment of Stefanski from McCoy's perspective. He pointed out that this isn't a one-time mistake or an isolated incident of poor judgment. The Browns have been watching Stefanski make these kinds of decisions all season long. Fans have been looking foolish defending him all year. And ultimately, McCoy said what needed to be said plainly and directly. Kevin Stefanski is coaching for his job at this point, and he's doing a terrible job of keeping it secure. That assessment is completely accurate and needs to be acknowledged more widely. Kevin Stefanski has looked absolutely terrible as a head coach, not just this year but going back to last season as well. He's made consistently poor decisions, failed to adapt his approach when things clearly aren't working, and most damningly, appears to be actively sabotaging his most talented offensive player for reasons that have nothing to do with winning football games. Yet somehow, people keep giving him pass after pass, making excuses for organizational dysfunction and poor roster construction when the reality is that coaching matters tremendously and Stefanski simply hasn't been good enough. The pattern of behavior specifically regarding goal line and red zone situations is impossible to ignore or explain away. Every single time the Browns get close to the end zone, Stefanski finds creative ways to take Sanders out of the game. They'll run wildcat formations with wide receivers taking direct snaps. They'll put other players under center to attempt trick plays. They'll do essentially anything and everything except let their talented quarterback who's been moving the offense all game actually finish the drive and score the touchdown. It's beyond comprehension at this point. The suggestion was made humorously that Stefanski would probably put the punter under center and have him try to throw the ball before he'd let Sanders have too many opportunities to throw touchdown passes. While that's obviously hyperbole, it captures the absurdity of the pattern we've witnessed throughout the season. Stefanski appears willing to try literally anything other than the obvious correct decision of letting his quarterback play quarterback in critical moments. The commentary from the analysts expressed frustration about simultaneously having to hate Stefanski for his decision-making, while also sometimes acknowledging when he makes decent calls in other situations. But the overwhelming consensus is that coaches sometimes make things unnecessarily complicated for no good reason whatsoever. There are coaches who always try to be the smartest person in the room, who want to show off their creativity and cleverness even when the simple, obvious play is clearly the right call. When your quarterback is performing at a high level and making plays, why are you playing mind games and outsmarting yourself? The question was asked rhetorically. Why are you going to the rookie running back instead of the quarterback in the most critical moment? It doesn't make sense. There's no logical football explanation that justifies that decision. The broader context that makes this entire situation even more frustrating is the disparity in how different rookie quarterbacks are being set up for success or failure by their respective organizations. Cam Ward walked into a situation where the Tennessee Titans have committed to building around him properly, giving him a strong running game that takes pressure off his shoulders, protecting him adequately with their offensive line, and not asking him to be Superman from day one. That's exactly how you should develop a rookie quarterback, giving them a strong supporting cast and allowing them to grow into the role gradually as they gain experience and confidence. Shedeur Sanders walked into a situation where he was given virtually no support, minimal first-team practice repetitions, questionable play calling that seems designed to undermine rather than showcase his abilities, and an organizational approach that appears more interested in justifying why they didn't want to start him rather than maximizing his chances of success. The running game disparity is particularly stark and significant. Having an effective ground game doesn't just help quarterbacks by taking pressure off them. It also fundamentally changes how defenses have to approach the game, forcing them to respect the run and opening up opportunities in the passing game through play action and defensive adjustments. When you have absolutely no running game whatsoever, as the Browns have experienced with Sanders at quarterback, it makes everything exponentially more difficult. Defenses can pin their ears back and rush the passer, knowing you're almost certainly going to throw. They can play aggressive coverage schemes without worrying about getting gashed on the ground. They can put the quarterback in obvious passing situations where everyone in the stadium knows what's coming. Sanders has been operating under those adverse circumstances all season, while still managing to produce impressive statistical performances and demonstrate clear franchise quarterback potential. The fact that Sanders led the Browns in both passing and rushing in the game against Tennessee tells you everything you need to know about the lack of support he's receiving from the rest of the offensive personnel and the coaching staff's game planning. He's being asked to be the entire offense by himself, creating plays through the air and on the ground simultaneously because nobody else is stepping up to help carry the load. Compare that to Ward's situation where he can hand the ball off to Pollard and watch him rack up huge chunks of yardage, taking the pressure and spotlight off the quarterback and allowing him to pick his spots when throwing the ball. That's not a criticism of Ward personally. He's playing well within the system Tennessee has built for him. But it is a critical acknowledgement that the circumstances these two quarterbacks are operating within are dramatically different and need to be considered when evaluating their respective performances and potential. The growth and development trajectory for rookie quarterbacks depends enormously on the quality and quantity of practice repetitions they receive. This is why the disparity between the 5 months of first-team reps that Ward has accumulated versus the couple of weeks that Sanders has gotten is so significant and problematic. Quarterbacks learn and improve through repetition, through developing timing and chemistry with receivers, through running plays against first-team defenses in practice, through getting comfortable with the offensive system and all its variations and adjustments. When you deny a quarterback those opportunities during training camp and the early part of the season, you're actively hindering their development and making it more difficult for them to succeed when they finally do get opportunities in actual games. The revelation that Sanders was throwing passes next to trash cans and working with equipment managers during training camp while the Browns publicly claimed there was a legitimate quarterback competition is damning and reveals the organizational dysfunction that has plagued this entire situation. That's not how you develop a quarterback you actually believe in and want to succeed. That's how you handle someone you've already decided you don't want to start, regardless of what they show you in practice or preparation. The competition was theater, a performance put on for public consumption, while behind the scenes the decisions had already been made based on factors that had nothing to do with actual football ability or performance. Kevin Stefanski's pattern of pulling Sanders in goal line and critical situations has become so consistent and obvious that it's impossible to view it as anything other than intentional at this point. Once or twice might be questionable coaching decisions or failed attempts at creativity. But when it happens repeatedly, week after week, in the most important moments of games, it becomes clear that something else is driving these decisions beyond normal football logic. Whether it's ego, stubbornness, predetermined conclusions about Sanders that Stefanski refuses to revise despite contrary evidence, or some other factor entirely, the result is the same. A talented young quarterback being systematically undermined and sabotaged by his own coaching staff. The comparison between how Stefanski uses Sanders versus how other coaches utilize their rookie quarterbacks in similar situations is stark and telling. When other teams get into goal line situations with their young quarterbacks playing well, they typically try to get the ball in those quarterbacks' hands and let them make plays. That's how you build confidence, develop skills in pressure situations, and show your quarterback that you trust them. Stefanski's approach is the complete opposite, consistently taking Sanders out precisely when the moments are most critical and the opportunities for success are greatest. That approach doesn't just hurt the team's chances of winning in the immediate game. It damages the long-term development and confidence of the quarterback who's supposed to be the franchise cornerstone. The analysts' assessment that Stefanski has been awful as a head coach throughout this season and last season is harsh but fair based on the evidence of his decision-making and the results the Browns have produced. Yes, there are roster issues and personnel limitations that aren't entirely the head coach's fault. But coaching matters enormously in the NFL, and good coaches find ways to maximize the talent they have, while bad coaches make talented players look worse than they actually are. Stefanski has consistently fallen into the latter category, making decisions that defy basic football logic and managing games in ways that actively hurt his team's chances of winning. The fact that he continues to receive a pass from many media members and analysts despite this consistent pattern of poor performance is baffling and speaks to biases and predetermined narratives that have nothing to do with actual coaching effectiveness. The ultimate tragedy of this entire situation is that the Cleveland Browns have a legitimate franchise quarterback prospect in Sanders, who could potentially be the answer they've been desperately searching for over decades of futility at the position, and they're squandering that opportunity through organizational dysfunction and coaching incompetence. Sanders has shown all the physical tools, mental processing, leadership qualities, and competitive fire that you want from a quarterback. He's performed well despite receiving minimal support from his coaching staff, limited first-team practice repetitions, virtually no running game, and active sabotage in critical moments. Imagine what he could accomplish if the organization actually committed to building around him properly, giving him the support structure that other rookie quarterbacks receive, and allowing him to develop in an environment designed to maximize his success rather than undermine it.